Okay, good morning all. Today I'm going to talk about the next session, which is, as I said in the previous lecture, that we have already covered utility. Now we are going to talk about the budget constraint, which is again a thing which is makes you to understand the conceptualization of consumers' behavior. Okay, and in this lecture, what I'm going to basically looking at is basically the budget constraints and how that is going to affect the decision making mechanism. And for that I am strictly following the textbook variance intermediate microeconomics, especially that title itself is the same, budget constraints. Okay, so let me come to this thing, consumer theory. As I have already discussed, in economists assumes that consumers choose their best bundle of goods they can afford, and this chapter first specifies in detail what consumer can afford, the budget constraints or the consumption possibility set. What is best for the consumer or the preference on the possible consumption bundle will be discussed in the next lecture. All right. So all this is basically been part of this understanding. So let me. I think we need to ask a couple of things before beginning the lecture. That is, so far the all three lectures. I hope all of you have gone through. Again, you can also listen that in the YouTube channel. So I hope that you have come across, and please reserve some question if you have at the end of the presentation. Also, you can also ask the questions if you wish to from this particular lecture. So with this, let me come to the problem. Like as I said, I'm going to talk about the budget constraint. Let first define what is a budget constraint. A consumption bundle contains x1 units of commodity 1 and x2 units of commodity 2, and so on up to xn units of commodity. N is denoted by a vector which is called the x1 to xn vector. Okay, so this is trying to say that you have actually a bundle which is available for your at your disposal, basically for your choice. Now or this is all the x1 to xn is called your preference units in the bundle, right? And you may be also a corresponding price for all this thing, like x1 p1, that is p1 price for x1, and x1 p x2 p2, x3 p3, etc., xn pn. So you have a corresponding vector which is called a price vector. Now you have a quantity vector which is comprised of x1 to xn, as well as you have a price vector which is available in your at your disposal, basically. Okay, this is very simple. Like if you have apples and then you have a price of apples, right? So if you have different kinds of apple, then you have a different kinds of price for different kinds of apple. This is what is represented by x1 to xn to p1 to pn. Okay, so the question is, when is a consumption bundle x1 xn is affordable at price p1 to pn? So this is what is the question. Now it is very simple. That is, the answer is simple. Like when total expenditure is smaller than the income, then you can afford it. We have already discussed it. Where you have discussed the utility, kind of what does actually our preference forms, etc., based on the utility which you may be getting out of it. So in this case, what does actually we are talking about now? Income, right? Now, if your income is greater than the price of the commodity, then we can call it as you can afford all the commodity within the bundle. So this is what is called when the expenditure is smaller than income. That is your P1 X1 plus P2 X2 plus etc. plus Pn Xn. This is less than what is your M. M is nothing but your income. So M is your consumer's disposable income. So that is one's total expenditure is smaller than or equal to one's income. Now, if that is the case, then the bundle that are only just affordable by the consumer is one's best constraint, and this set is called, you have a grand set which is x1 xn, such that your x1 is greater than or equal to 0, again x2 which is greater than or equal to 0, or xn, etc., etc., xn which is greater than or equal to 0. This is simple, that you have actually a value for all the commodity which is available in the set. In the previous lecture also I said this specifically, that is, we will consider those goods within the set if and only if that has a value which is greater than 0. So if there is no value, we will never count that unit inside the bundle as a desirable bundle, all right, or as a desirable unit in the bundle. Now if that is the case, then obviously it is saying that you have also a positive price for it, right? P1 to P1 x1 is also, if you have a value of x1 which is greater than 0, then definitely there is having a price which is also greater than 0. Now if it is 0, then your price is 0. So if there is no value for the commodity, then you will never pay any amount for that. That is what is our assumption, like P1 x1 plus px etc. plus pn xn, which is equal to your income. Now what is that is trying to say? All the commodity which is affordable can comprise of within your income limit. That is, either it is equal to your income or it can be less than your income. If it is less than, then still you can afford something, so you can keep on adding it until your m is get exhausted by the commodity units in the set. So this is what is actually comprised of the total number of units which you can afford within your given income. So if that is the case, there is no surplus or deficit in that case. So this is what is an exhaustible ideal bundle as far as a consumer is concerned. So now if that is the case, then the budget constraint is the upper boundary of the budget set. That is, from the understanding, what we are trying to make is the following, that is, if your consumer's budget set is set of all affordable bundle, as I said, like P1 X1 to PN X1 XN. If that is the case, then what I am trying to make is your budget is nothing but all the P1 to PN price. So that is going to be your income, which is exactly going to give you the utility, as I said. So of the in the form of a commodity. So if that is the case, then what you P1 is actually given that circumstance of your income, that makes a point, and all the points which you add together, and then if you draw a line, then that is going to give you an upper bound of what you can. So completely you can, if your m is equal to all P1 x1 x1 to Pn xn, then you can say that that is all comes under the preferable affordable set. So if that is the case, then to make it more understandable, let's have a draw. That is, this is what is your m by p2 and m by p1, which is nothing but your budget constraint. This p1 x1 x1 plus p2 x2, which is equal to m. You have now only two commodity, x1 and x2, as well as corresponding price p1 and p2. Okay, so that is going to give you a p2 category as well as a p1 category on the x-axis, and the former is on the x2 axis or y-axis. So if that is the thing, then the affordable thing always, as we said, falls under this in the line. So that is forms the green point, and anything above that green line which is not affordable because your income is insufficient for that. Anything which is an yellow line, which is a yellow point, which is affordable, but still you are not actually maximizing your utility by exhausting your income. So this is what is called the budget set. So budget constraint and budget line is P1 x1, P2 x2, which is equal to m. So this is what is overall you are trying to enjoy. So if your P1 x1 plus P2 x2 is equal to m, then your x2, which is equal to the P1 by P2 times x1 plus m by P2. So slope is actually the negative slope is there. So your P1 by P2 is your slope. So if that is the case, then you can, so slope is nothing but I keep telling, the substitutability. Okay. So which is an inverse. So whatever you want to gain, you can only gain if you give up. So this is what is represented in the negative, sign. So for n is equal to 2, so the total number of commodity in this case is unit is 2, and x1 on the horizontal axis, the constraints slope is the negative p1 by p2. So what does it mean? It means that x2 is equal to minus p1 by p2, x1 plus m by p2 for a linear line. So linear line is not the line which is actually the transformation, or what you call the substitutability, is perfect in that sense. So y is equal to mx plus c, and m is the slope of the line, while c is the the intercept. Okay, so this is what is actually it's known. And somebody also asked an doubt in the previous class, basically following from the previous lecture, and this is what is the thing. So if you understand this, things are easier. It's very preliminary. So this is what is your p1 by p2, and this is what is called your slopes. Slope is minus p1 by p2. So I think it is clear for all of you now. Now, the cost of an extra unit of commodity 1 is P1 by P2 units and foregone to commodity 2. So if you want to get an X1 unit, you have to basically forego the X2 commodity of that much. So that is what this dashed line trying to tell you. If you want to move from P1, that is X1 to X2, then you have to give up this much of X1 for Y. Okay. So the budget constraints and the budget set depends upon price and income. What happens is the price or income change. So suppose if you have an income which is given, that is the original budget set. This is the original budget set as we mentioned. So if there is a price change takes place, what happens to your income? So this is the question. How does the budget set and budget constraint changes as income M increases? Now, this is a straight increase of your income from the earlier affordability to the newer affordability. The new line is actually making you to have more X and more X1 and more X2. So new affordable consumption choice straightly gives you that the original and new budget constraints are parallel slopes. Okay, which is telling you that the same level of transformation is there, but now you have a higher kind of affordability because your income has increased. Now the income change can also be resulted within other forms also. So that is what we are going to discuss now. So okay, so increase in M shifts the constraints outward in a parallel manner, thereby enlarging the budget sets and improving the choice. Decrease in income M shifts the constraint inward in a parallel manner, thereby shrinking the budget sets and reducing the choice. This is what this is showing. Earlier, your green line was your original one, and now the income reduced. Therefore, you are at a smaller and new level of affordability. That is, your income has shrunk in this case. So that is what is actually noted from this point, 2 points, and the slope of P1 does not change in this case. See, because it is parallel shift, that is both X1 and X2 equally being scuttled because your income is having an absolute influence on both the commodity. Okay, your income changed, not because of the X1 and X2's characteristics which is changed or the price which is changed, but your total income rised. Okay, you got something extra or something being taken away. So that is definitely going to have an effect on your X1 and X2. This is what is we try to make in the parallel reduction in X1 and X2 price. Uh, that is one way of looking at. When income increase, no original choice is lost and a new choices are added. So higher income cannot make a consumer worse off in that sense. So when income decreases, the consumer may typically will be worse off as one can no longer afford some of the bundles anymore. So this is what is a straight point. Now, what happens if the price decrease of one commodity? Okay, just one commodity, if the price changes, what is going to be the result is the concern next. Like suppose P1 decreases. So what happens if this is the original budget set, like P1 by P2 is given, and now from MP1 dash to MP1 double dash. Now that is the point which is the price going to be changing. Then what happens? The new affordable choice is actually being. Now it is having a lineage towards X1 because the price of X1 has fallen. The price of X fallen imply that now you can afford more X1 when you compare with X2. Now in this case also X2 relatively changes, but not exactly the X1's effect. See why? Because the maximum point of X2 affordable at this even given income also is the same as the original one. So that is the point. That is only one commodity price is influenced, completely changed. Now you have a choice between these two things, and you can definitely go better in this case also, but not absolutely. Okay. So the budget constraints pivot slopes flatten from P1 dash P2 to P1 double dash P2. Okay. And reducing the price of one commodity pivots the constraint outward. So the old choice is lost and new choices are added. So reducing one price cannot make the consumer worse off in this situation. Similarly, increase one price pivots the constraint inward. That is consider a price change P1 to P2. That is P1 dash double dash to P1 double one dash. So reduces choice and make typically will make the consumer worse off. This is simply because now suppose if your MP1 double dash is actually your original one, then you can also say that if it is moving towards M by P1 dash, that is actually an increase in price of X1 takes place. So then relatively your affordability will fall. So in that sense, the consumer will also get worse off. Now, this is quite straightforward, and of course, in real world, you can see different examples to substitute this argument, like tax and subsidies, for example. Now, when somebody tax you, what does it mean? Portion of your income is being taken out. Okay. At the same time, if somebody is actually subsidized, let's say the presence of income, sorry, the government, that is presence of government makes two incentives or disincentive. One is tax and the other one is subsidy. So if the government tax you, that implies that a portion of income is gone. If the government gives you a subsidy, then a portion of income is being increased in that sense. So quantity per unit of tax, that is price increase from P to P plus T. So that is actually having an effect in the P itself. So quantity per unit of subsidy is again having price decrease from P to PS because you are having more that commodity because you have a higher income. So again, value added tax price increases from P to P, again the same. So if you have a tax, what does it mean is that actually the overall price of the commodity will increase. That means the affordability of that. What does it mean? It means that an imposition of a tax will take away your purchasing power. At the same time, a subsidy will always gives you purchasing power better. So this is what is actually the kind of understanding. So uniform ad valorem sales tax in that sense. So there are many arguments when we will deal with in the public economics lecture in the coming year. That is in your third semester, you are going to have a lecture on public finance. It is already available this year's public finance lecture is also available in the online YouTube. So you can see when you say that government exists, you have all this thing, this issue of taking away your income because government will exist if and only if you need it. Okay. Now, for existence of that government, you have to pay for it. This is kind of a service, payment. So tax is nothing but a service, spending by the individual themselves. So A subsidy is actually the government, those income which the government gets, they are spending it towards us. So it is not your per se your direct earning, but it is given by the government in some other. So it is called a transfer in that sense. Transfer by the government. Again, tax is also a transfer from individual to government. Subsidy is also a transfer in that sense from government to individual in that sense. So there are, I mean, in a closed mechanism, if we look into, then things are much more clearer, and we will discuss about all that. So let's come to the uniform ad valorem sales tax. So that is, or even the GST kind of a uniform sales tax levied at rate at T on all rate T on all goods changes the constraints from P1x1 plus P2x2 is equal to M to 1 plus T. That is P1x1 plus 1 plus T times P2x2, which is equal to M. Now, this is simply say that you have a tax imposed on your volume, then that will definitely going to have an effect in your total income or your purchasing power. So P1x1 plus P2x2 is equal to 1 by M by 1 plus T. So tax. So how it is going to have an effect? If you value, then your income will be actually either comes. If it is subsidy, the reverse is going to happen, or the other one, your income will fall. That is, the commodity affordability will get basically influenced by an introduction of a tax or a subsidy. This is what we are trying to. So in that sense, in a simplest understanding of say tax or subsidy, definitely your budget being influenced. A budget being influenced in a sense that your total affordability of commodity being influenced by the tax or subsidy. Okay, so definitely there is an intervention in that sense. So this is not individual per se. So you voluntarily don't give up your tax. That is what our assumption is in the form of a tax. So this is one way to understand. But anyway, we'll come to that again in the discussion. Now there are different kinds of lump sum tax, government tax, a fixed sum of money, that is T, regardless of the individual's behavior. So this is what is actually called, for example, an indirect tax, for example. So indirect taxes are always being treated in the real world as a regressive tax, because it is having a fixed effect on, or the tax is fixed, but the effect is not fixed. A poor person also pays 5% or 12% or 18% for the commodity which he or she purchase, or at the same time, a rich person is also spending. Now here, rich and poor, marginal utility of A and B never been treated. Everything is treated on the same. So regardless of that individual's behavior, this is going to have an effect which is having. So this is equivalent to a decrease in the income by T, implying an inward parallel shift of a budget line. So exactly this is what is going to happen. Now, if you have a proportional tax on the contrary, then it is having been treating the individual differently. Those who have a higher income has to pay higher amount, and those who have a lesser income, pay a lesser amount. So this is having a relative effect on the commodity purchasing power. Again, similar lump sum subsidies also has the same effect, in the opposite effect. In fact, it implies an outward parallel shift of budget line corresponding to an amount of a subsidy which is given. Now, again, in the real world, you have other programs like food force, work, like in India, and you have MGNRGM and MNREGA programs. That is rural employment guarantee scheme, where also you are getting an income, but at the same time you are guaranteed. But this is not that we are talking about. The food stamp program, like food stamps are coupons that can be legally exchanged only for food. Okay. At the same time, this ration, you can actually go with your ration card. If it is a pink card, you will get some amount of ration. If you have yellow card, then you have some other form, blue card, then you have white card. So all these different cards have different sort of an entitlement. This is exactly the food stamp kind of thing. So the food stamps are coupons that can be legally exchanged only for food. So how does a commodity specific gift such as food stamps alter a family's budget constraint? Again, this is going to have an effect because now you have a stamp means you will get an income. So you are affording a sort of commodity which is otherwise without a food stamp you cannot afford. So here, in that sense, a food stamp is going to give you a higher entitlement. Here we assume one of the two goods is full. Suppose M is equal to $100 and P of food price of food is equal to $1 and the price of other goods is PG, which is equal to $1. The budget constraint is then F plus G is equal to 100. Okay, so this is what is your 100 G and F together. So before stamp. Now suppose if you have a food stamp, budget says after $40 food stamps issued. Now 40. The family's budget set is enlarged to 140 because it's already been afforded by this 40 as a food stamp thing. And now the person can actually go for little more of G and the F. If they want to have more food, then they'll definitely go for. Otherwise, also they get it. Okay. Otherwise, previously it is not possible. Okay. So, how does the unit of account affects the budget constraint and the budget set? Again, this is another set of questions. That is, suppose price and income are measured in dollars. Say P1 is equal to $2 and P2 is equal to $3. So M is total. Your income is actual disposable income 12. Then the constraint is 2x1 plus 3x2, which is equal to 12. So if price and the income are measured in cents, then P1 is equal to 200 and P2 is equal to 300. M is equal to 1200 and the 1200 cents. Okay. So and then the constraint is like the 200x1 plus 300x2, which is equal to 1200. Upon simplification, it is the same as 2x1 plus 3x2, which is equal to 12. So changing the unit of account changes neither the budget constraint nor the budget set. This is what is actually one of the important lesson which you have to take. So the budget, the constraint of P1 to P1 is equal to 2 and P2 is equal to 3 and M is equal to 12 is going to give you 2x1 plus 3x2 is equal to 12 is also 1x plus 3 by 2 x2 which is equal to 6. The constraints for P1 which is equal to 1 and P2 which is equal to 3 by 2 and M is equal to 6. So this is also a kind of mechanism which one can actually understand. Setting P1 is equal to 1 makes commodity 1 the numeraire and defines all price relative to P1. So in that case, and example 3 by 2 is the price of commodity 2 relative to the price of commodity 1. So this is one proportion which you can immediately draw from this understanding. So again, multiplying all prices and income by any constraint K does not change the budget constraint in that sense. So that is your, if you introduce a constant like K, so your KP1 x1 plus KP2 x is time is equal to K times M. So any commodity can be chosen as the numeraire, like by taking K is equal to 1 by Pi without changing the budget set or the budget constraints. So in that context, it is quite clear. It is also clear that the graph that only the ratio P1 by P2, M by P1 and M by P2 are relevant to the budget line and the budget set. So the question is that what makes a budget constraint a straight line? So answer is a straight line has a constant slope and the constraint is P1 x1 plus P2 x2 plus etc plus Pn xn, which is equal to M. So if prices are constant, then the constraint is a straight line. So this is what is the easiest understanding of this problem. So what if price are not constant? For example, if the price changes, if there is a variability in the price. So I keep in the last lecture also, if there is a variability, then only you will have a curve. Otherwise, you will never have a curve. So if you have a curve that imply that there is a variability in that proportion. Now, perfect substitute case, there is no variability, right? So that is what is one way you have a straight line. So same the case with the budget line. If the budget line is a straight line, it implies that there is no variability, assumed. So bulk buying discount or price penalties for buying too much or tax, etc. Then the constraint will be curved or have kink. For example, if there is a I don't know how many of you remember that when initially when the demonetization was introduced, there is a cap for purchase of online. For example, if you exceed 2000 rupees purchase from a consumer shop, then you have to pay tax of some percentage. Okay. Or this is the same case with the GST introduction also. An interesting point. Like 2000, then there is there is actually you have to pay more tax. If it is less than 2000, then you don't pay anything in that sense. Only you pay an amount which is actually affordable. Stipulated for that commodity. That's it. If it is above that 2000, so what normally people had done in the shops and from my own experience, all the shopkeepers try to say that they used to split your products. Okay, so if your product is worth 3000 or 4000, they will ask you, whether I can put it on one bill, then you have to pay another tax, or it has been split. So in that sense, there is a variability involved, and to avoid that, what you have done, you normally people try to split it and evaded the tax, which is actually imposed. Otherwise, what happens? It is actually having an effect which is another than of the same commodity, which is less than 2000 rupees. The substitutability or the cost which you are supposed to incur would be different to that of if it exceeds 2000 rupees. So that will have a variability in the price of the commodity. Then it is not going to have a smooth curve in that sense, a straight line. It will have a kink or kind of a tilt will take place in that kind of situation. So that is what is actually we are trying to introduce here. So if you really observe your real world experiences, then you can definitely understand what is actually the implication of microeconomics in that sense. Normally people say that it has no, it is only theoretical and all. No, it is in fact, you can really understand that the behavior of market by simply observing in the market. The point is that whether we are really doing it or not is a different question altogether. Now, the shapes of budget constraint in this case, quantity discount. Suppose P2 is constant at $1, but P1 is $2. For you have, I said, your zero, that is no value doesn't exist. That is your X is always having a positive value, and which is always less than 20. 20 is nothing but your M. So P1 is $1 for X1 is greater than 20, and then the constant slope is actually -2 for a 0 which is less than or equal to X1 which is less than or equal to 20, which is again your inverse of P1 P2 which is 1, and for X1 it is greater than. So assume M is equal to 100. So this is what is your king. Shape of a budget constraint, the same example we can. So if it is exceeds more than 2000 rupees, there will be a kink in the slope, that is price of the commodity, which is an additional burden which is going to be inflicted on all the commodity. That is X1 and X2 has the same effect if it is exceeds 2000. Okay, in this case we represent it as 20. So if it is 2000, same the case. If it is more than 2000, then you will be in the new curve. That means there is a variability now. It is not anymore a straight line. Now there is a kink at the point 20. intercept, like 80/20. So now you have a slope which is 2 by 1, which is equal to, all right. So it is pretty simple, and I don't want to. Now the issue is that you have a slope which is an yellow slope is different to that of the white dotted line slope, which is 1 by 1. Okay, so there is a kink in. So now your budget constraint, your total budget is set, unlike the earlier budget set which we spoke, which is a straight line. Now here there is a curvy or a kinky budget set in this context. Okay. So this is also possible in another form. Okay, there is a fall in price for the other thing. For example, if you exceed more than 2,000, then somebody can give you incentive also, like subsidy. What happens then? That slope would be lesser. So that is why you have a concavity, a kind of thing you can observe inside the budget sets. So what I am trying to overall do with this lecture is the following: that the budget sets describes what consumption bundles are affordable to the consumer, and budget constraint is typically described by P1 X1 plus P2 X2, which is equal to M. So your total income is being exhausted by the commodity price, the commodity and its price. So, which is a straight line. When prices are constant, when income increases, budget set shifts outward, enlarges the budget set. When price increases, the slope of the budget line changes and it shrinks the budget sets. So these are the things which is actually came up in this lecture. So I would like to ask the student whether this is sufficient or